Rancher found a Seminole girl hanging from a tree by a rope wrapped around her waist. A sign below read, "She betrayed the tribe." The first thing she heard was the groan of the rope. Then silence. Not one voice called out, not even to curse her. They just watched. Dozens of her own people stood in a jagged, broken half-circle, their shadows cast long across the dust-red ground beneath the cottonwood tree. Warriors with war paint fading on tired faces, elders clutching canes like they held history itself. Even the women who once braided her hair, who'd once laughed with her by the river, stood still, silent, faces turned to stone. Her bare feet left the earth at exactly 5:12 p.m. Her name was Alia, of the Seminole blood. Her crime? Shame. Her punishment? Death by her own kin, hung from a cottonwood, 37 steps from where she was born, with her wrists bound and her eyes open. She hadn't screamed when they dragged her. She hadn't pleaded when her younger brother turned his face away, because the betrayal had already killed something inside her long before the noose tightened. The last thing she saw before the world blacked out was the sky, too wide, too blue, a sky that didn't care what they did to her. By dusk, the crowd had melted into the trees. The rope swayed, gentle, like it grieved her. Her body hung limp, long black hair brushing her shoulders like a tired river ribbon. No birds came. Even the wind refused to stay. Then came the sound of hoovaslow, uncertain, breaking the hush like a whisper never meant to be heard. A single horse emerged from the tree line. On it rode a dust-worn man with a slouched hat pulled low, a rifle slung lazy across his back. He didn't wear a uniform, didn't fly any flag, just a weathered coat and a look in his eyes like he'd forgotten what home meant. His name was Caleb, though most around these parts knew him only as Dustbone, a nickname earned from riding too long and burying too many. He wasn't looking for trouble. He was looking for water. But what he saw froze him in place. Her, dangling like forgotten fruit from a branch that groaned under her weight. He dismounted. His boots landed in soft dust, the leather creaking. He stared, the breath in his chest catching, not because he hadn't seen death before, he'd seen plenty, but because this didn't look like justice. It looked like a damn execution. Then her fingers twitched, barely, like a ghost remembering it had once been flesh. "Son of a," he whispered, stepping closer. One tug of his knife. The rope snapped. She collapsed into his arms like a broken doll dropped by heaven itself. If you're still here and your heart's already pounding, drop a 1 or comment 1 below if you love cowboy love stories or Wild West tales. We've got more riding in. Her chest bucked once, then again, air scratching its way back into her lungs like a thief reclaiming stolen gold. She gasped, wild and broken. "Easy," Caleb muttered, kneeling in the dirt, her limp form cradled in his lap. "Easy now. You're all right. You ain't gone yet." But she didn't hear him. Her eyes rolled back, lips parted but said nothing. He looked around. No one. Not even a bird. She wasn't meant to live. That's why they left her swinging. He didn't know how long he sat there, arms wrapped around this near-dead stranger. The sky had turned honey-colored, sun hanging low like it, too. Wasn't sure it should watch. Then she coughed. Loud, rattling, violent. Her head jerked forward against his chest. Her hands clawed weakly, then fell. Her voice was a rasp. "Don't touch me." Caleb blinked. "You're alive." "I'd rather not be," she said, her throat dry as ash. "Hell, that makes 2 of us," he muttered. They sat like that for a moment, the weight of too many ghosts pressing down on the air. Caleb, unsure. Alia, unwilling. "You got a name?" he asked eventually. "Does it matter?" "It will if I gotta dig you a grave." She coughed again, trying to sit up. "Alia." He nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her mouth. "All right, Alia. I ain't gonna hurt you. But you ain't gonna die here either. Not today." "Why?" she asked, her voice so faint it cracked. "Why save me?" Caleb didn't answer right away. His jaw tensed. The sun caught the edge of his cheekbone, revealing a scar that sliced from jawline to temple like a memory that wouldn't fade. "Because maybe," he said finally, "I got too many ghosts on my back already. One more might break me." The ride back to his camp was slow. He tied her carefully across his saddle, arms around her so she wouldn't fall. Her body was light, but her silence was heavy. Her skin was warm-fevered, Maybe, but her spirit cold. Distant. "You from around these parts?" he asked. "I was. Until today." "They say you did it?" "Number." He didn't ask what it was. Didn't need to. He could see it in her eyes, that dull, stormy look of someone who'd been branded guilty just for being inconvenient. They reached his camp near the Cimarron Bend. A fire pit, one lean-to, 2 horses, and a pot that hadn't held stew in days. He laid her on a blanket, fetched water. She sipped slowly, watching him. "You don't trust me," he said. "No," she replied. "But I don't hate you either." He grunted. "That's fair." Then after a pause she asked, "You ever been betrayed by your own?" His face hardened. "Yes." "What did you do?" He stirred the fire. "I buried them. Some in the dirt, some just in my mind. But none of them came back right. Man." That night, as coyotes howled far off and the wind returned, brushing gently through the tall grass like a mother shushing her child, Alia finally slept. Caleb stayed awake, rifle in lap, eyes on the stars. In the quiet, he whispered half to her, half to himself. Sometimes the dead come back wrong, but sometimes they come back stronger. He didn't know which one she'd be, but he'd be there to find out. Indian Territory, the 3rd of April, 1884, 2 miles east of the Cimarron. The cabin wasn't much more than 4 crooked walls and a roof patched with rawhide and rusted tin, tucked beneath a slouching bluff like it had given up on standing straight years ago. The wind came and went as it pleased, through the broken window slats, whispering dry secrets through the brittle boards. Dust gathered thick in the corners, untouched for months, maybe years, except for the trail Caleb's boots had carved across the floor, pacing back and forth through a solitude no one cared to share. Alia lay curled on the cot in the far corner, wrapped in a weathered army blanket that smelled of smoke, leather, and cold nights. Her skin still bore the purple ghosts of the rope's embrace, and each time she shifted, she winced as though her muscles remembered betrayal even in rest. She hadn't spoken in hours, not since the fire dimmed and the coyotes gave up their song. Caleb sat on an old crate by the hearth, whittling a scrap of cedar with the focus of a man who didn't trust silence, even as he invited it. His hands were rough, knuckles scarred from more than just war. One finger twisted slightly, like it had broken wrong, and no one ever cared to set it. He hadn't asked her any more questions, and that more than anything made her uneasy. "Where'd you learn to sit that still?" she rasped finally, voice like sand blown across a grave. Caleb looked up, surprised not by the sound but by its timing. He set the wood down on the edge of the crate and shrugged. "Long trail rides, Indian scouts, prison." She blinked. "You been to prison?" "Once or twice," he muttered. "Not for anything I didn't deserve." Silence again, then a breath. "What did you do?" He leaned back, letting the chair creak beneath him. "There was a village, Apache. Orders came down to burn it. They said it was harboring rebels. Turned out it was just women and kids, but we were soldiers, and soldiers ain't supposed to ask." Alia's face didn't flinch, but her shoulders curled tighter beneath the blanket. "I followed orders," he said, jaw tight, eyes looking not at her but somewhere far past her, through the walls, the hills, into a past soaked in smoke. "And that night I couldn't sleep. That was the first time I ever heard my conscience louder than my captain's voice." Alia studied him. "You still hear it?" He nodded. "Every time I try to forget." The wind hissed through the cracks. A log popped in the fire. Then she whispered, "My people left me swinging." It wasn't a confession. It was a verdict tone she had carried like a stone in her gut, heavy and cold. "I didn't betray them. I spoke out. I found papers hidden beneath the elder's tent. Land deeds, money changing hands. I thought if I showed someone would stop it." She swallowed, voice cracking like dry earth. "But instead, they called me a traitor." Caleb didn't speak. He stood slowly, fetched a battered tin cup, and filled it from a bucket in the corner. He brought it to her. Alia hesitated, then took it because thirst doesn't care about pride. Her hands shook. Caleb saw it but said nothing, only returned to the crate and resumed carving, the cedar now shaped like a horse's head. "I never liked horses," she said after a while. "Too proud, too skittish, like they know they were meant to be wild but keep letting humans put rope on their necks." Caleb smirked. I take it you're not a fan of saddles either. I'm not a fan of cages, she replied, no matter how clean they look. The wind moaned again, brushing a lock of her hair across her cheek. She didn't brush it away. Caleb noticed how she let the little things stay, like she'd forgotten what it was like to care. You got any folks left, he asked. She was quiet. Then, one brother. He looked away when they threw the rope over the branch. Sometimes looking away is worse than holding the rope. She nodded, eyes shining with something brittle. That's what I thought too. They didn't talk much after that. Words were too sharp in a room full of wounds. Caleb made a stew with old jerky, beans, and wild onion. The smell wasn't pleasant, but it was warm. He slid the bowl toward her. She didn't thank him, just ate in small, cautious bites, like a stray dog learning trust. Later, she stood, slow and stiff, and walked barefoot across the creaky floor. She paused by the window, where the night rolled in over the hills, like ink spilled across the land. Her silhouette was lean but not fragile-like, something carved from willow, bent by storm but not broken. You ever kill a man for the right reason? She asked, still staring into the dark. Caleb didn't look up. Ain't never found one yet. Alia nodded. Me neither. But I came close. He rose, walked over, stood a few feet behind her. The firelight barely reached them. You still think about it, he asked. Every night. Caleb leaned his shoulder against the wall, arms folded. Ain't nothing wrong with surviving, even if it makes you angry. Alia turned then, slowly, the fire painting soft lines across her face. You think I'm angry? I think you've been holding your breath so long. You forgot what it feels like to breathe without pain. She laughed. Not loud, not joyful. A bitter, broken thing. You some kind of poet, cowboy? No, ma'am, he said. Just a man who talks to the wind too much. They stood in silence, the fire whispering behind them. Then, in a voice nearly lost to the wind, she said, I don't hate you anymore. Caleb looked at her. She didn't look back. Wasn't sure if you did, he said. I did, she replied. Not you, but your kind. Men who wear boots and carry rifles and think they can fix everything or kill it trying. Caleb didn't argue, because she wasn't wrong. But you didn't ask me why I was hanging, she said. Number. Why not? Because folks don't hang women like you for the truth. They do it to keep the lies safe. That stopped her. She looked at him then, really looked, and something in her chest shifted. Not healed, but rearranged. That night, she didn't sleep on the cot. She slept by the fire, back to the wall, his rifle between them not as a threat, but as a line neither would cross. And Caleb, for the first time in years, slept with his boots off, because something in the air had changed. Not forgiveness, not trust, but maybe just might be a reason to stay one more night. The wind changed just before dawn. It slipped in through the cracks in the wood like a warning whispered in a language older than bullets, older than blood. The scent of ash and iron hung in it faint, but not faint enough to miss. Caleb woke before the sun did, his body still and quiet like prey sensing a shift in the tall grass. Alia was already sitting up near the hearth, legs crossed beneath the blanket, eyes wide and alert. You smell that? She asked softly, not looking at him. He nodded. Smoke. Horses. Coming from the west. Too early for travelers. Too quiet for drunks. She turned her face toward him then. They're looking for one of us. Caleb stood, pulling on his boots. He moved with the slow, practiced grace of a man who had lived too long in hostile country, motion deliberate, noiseless. He took down his rifle from the hook above the door, checked the chamber, and slung it across his back. Pack what you need, he said. I don't have anything, she replied. Then move fast. They left the cabin just as the sky started bleeding from black into a dirty gray. The horses, still tied beneath the ridge, stirred as they approached. Caleb helped Alia mount the smaller of the two, an Appaloosa mare named Whisper, who had more attitude than speed but knew the canyons better than most men. They rode north, not toward safety, but into the hills where the cedars grew thick and the rocks held stories no white man ever learned to read. They didn't speak for an hour. Then Alia broke the silence, her voice soft beneath the wind. Tell me the truth, Caleb. Who did you piss off? He exhaled through his nose, hands steady on the reins. Long list. Pick the one most likely to burn your cabin down and come sniffing for blood. Then, Caleb squinted into the distance, where the sky split over a bluff like a cracked skull. Vince Travers. Friend of yours? Used to be. Rode together in the Territory Cavalry, until he started scalping dead bodies and calling it policy. Alia went silent, her grip tightening on the saddle horn. He saw me let an old Kiowa woman go once, Caleb continued. She was blind, couldn't walk, no weapon on her. I carried her to the river and let her drift away. You got soft, Alia murmured. I got human, he replied. He didn't. She looked at him then, not with pity, not with fear, but with something in between like recognition. And now he's hunting you? Probably wants to finish what he started 10 years ago. Maybe get my land, maybe prove a point. Alia turned her eyes forward again. Sounds familiar. They crossed a dry wash by midday, the sun climbing higher, too hot for spring. They stopped in the shade of a cottonwood grove, where the air held still, waiting for something to break. Alia dismounted first. Her legs were trembling. She hadn't eaten since the night before. Caleb handed her a strip of dried venison and a flask. Here. She took them without thanks. As she chewed, her voice came low. They'll find us, won't they? He didn't answer, because she already knew. By late afternoon, they heard the whistles. Two sharp, one long. Scout signals, not military tribal. Alia froze. Her eyes snapped to Caleb. That's Seminole. You sure? I lived with them for 19 years. I'd recognize their death call in my sleep. They turned the horses, pushed east toward the riverbed. But the land was watching now, and so were the men riding behind it. They made camp in a cave just off Black Bear Creek, barely a mouth in the rock, hidden beneath a veil of thistle and stone. Caleb built no fire. Alia sat with her back against the wall, knees drawn to her chest. You ever feel like the whole damn world is trying to erase you? She asked, her voice shaking not from fear, but from something older. Like everything you were born into was a lie, and the truth gets you hanged. Caleb sat beside her, arms resting on his knees. Every day, I used to believe in the stories they told, she whispered. The songs, the dances, the land belonging to the people, not to papers. I thought being good meant being loyal, and being loyal meant being safe. He looked at her sideways. You're still loyal. No, she said. I'm just alive, that's not the same. Outside, the wind howled through the trees like a wolf too tired to kill. Thena twigs snapped. Close. Caleb reached for his rifle, but the voice came first. Thought I'd find you here, Dustbone. It was slow, drawled, like honey gone sour. Caleb stood. A man stepped into the mouth of the cavatal, clean-shaven coat, too crisp for the terrain. His boots were polished. His eyes were pale and lifeless as a snake's paterus of Sexon Temeni Temen. Hello, Vince, Caleb said. Alia rose behind him, silent. Well, I'll be damned, Vince grinned. A redskin and a deserter sharing a cave. Makes me wonder which one of y'all's wearing the pants. Get to the point. Vince tilted his head. You got something that don't belong to you, Caleb. That land. That woman. That redemption you keep pretending you earned. He took a step forward. Caleb lifted the rifle, cocked it. One more step and you'll need a coffin. Vince smirked. You won't shoot. Not in front of her. You want to look like a hero. Then Alia stepped forward. Funny, she said, voice cold as steel. That's what my chief said before he left me hanging. Vince blinked, then laughed. Well, ain't she mouthy? He reached for his holster. Caleb didn't wait. The shot echoed through the trees, a single crack splitting the silence. Vince stumbled back, a blossom of red blooming across his coat. But he didn't fall. Not yet. You missed the heart, he rasped. I wasn't aiming for it, Caleb growled. I wanted you to feel it. Vince collapsed, coughing blood, his hand clawing at the dirt. Then he was still. The forest remained quiet. No scouts came. No horses. Only the breathless hush of the dead. Alia stood staring down at the body. He was just one head of the snake, she said. I know, Caleb replied. But you didn't hesitate. No, he said, not this time. She looked up at him. Something had shifted. The line between them, the invisible wall of pain and mistrust, wasn't gone, but it had cracked, and light was starting to leak through. You're not what I thought, she whispered. Neither are you, he replied. She stepped closer. I don't know if I forgive you. For being what you were, for being part of all this. I don't expect you to, but I don't hate you anymore either. Caleb looked at her, eyes worn, voice low. Then maybe we've got something worth protecting. She nodded, and for the first time since the tree, since the rope, since the silence, Alia smiled, a small, tired, battered thing. But it was real. The rope still lay coiled in Caleb's saddlebag of hemp, frayed at the loop where it had been cut. Alia had seen it when he reached for the canteen, and though her face didn't change, her hands stilled on the reins. He hadn't meant to keep it, but when he'd pulled her down from that tree, the noose had caught on his spur and fallen with her, and somehow it stayed, like a memory too stubborn to burn. Now, 3 days from the hanging tree, with Vince Travers buried shallow under cedar dust and the wolves already circling his body, the rope was still with them. So was the silence. They rode alongside the Red Fork River, the water thick with spring melt, running fast and brown. The banks were soft and jagged, broken in places where the floods had ripped through months before. Caleb knew the land well, but something in the air felt off too quiet, like even the river was holding its breath. He looked at Alia. She hadn't spoken since the gunshot. She rode upright, jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the horizon. Finally he said, "You got that look again." She didn't answer. "The one like you're counting how many bones you're willing to break to stay ahead of whatever's chasing you." Alia turned, slow and sharp. "And how many are you willing to break to protect someone who might not be worth the pain?" Caleb's jaw tightened. "That depends. You planning on running again?" "No," she said flatly. "I'm done running. Then I'll keep riding." They made camp under a thicket of twisted oaks just past sundown. The wind was changing again, cooler now, carrying the scent of wet soil and river clay. Alia sat by the fire, staring at her hands. They were stained, scratched, wrapped in Caleb's spare cloth. She flexed them slowly, like testing the limits of trust. "You said something before," she began, "about the rope, about how some ghosts come back wrong." He looked over. "Yeah, what if I am one?" Caleb set his tin cup down. The fire cracked between them. "You're not." She gave a dry laugh. "How would you know?" "Because ghosts don't bleed when they ride too long. Don't curse when their stew burns. Don't look at you like you're the first thing in years that made the world stop spinning." She stilled. "That what I am to you?" she asked, voice low. "Not yet," he said. "But I'm starting to hope." The next morning, the river mist rolled in early, swallowing the trees in white. Caleb walked the perimeter while Alia packed their things, and that's when he saw it. Hoof prints. Fresh. 4 horses. Heavy load. Traveling light. He came back and crouched by the fire pit. "We got company coming." "Yours or mine?" she asked. "Too early to say. But the tracks came from the east." Alia paused. "Then it's mine." He looked at her. "You sure?" She nodded, face unreadable. "My brother rides east after he lies." By noon, they heard them. First, the sound hooves, 4 riders moving like wolves in formation. Then the sight figures breaking through the mist, brown leather and feathers, faces painted in red ochre and coal. And in the lead, a younger man with eyes too old for his face. Alia froze. Caleb lowered his rifle, eyes narrowed. "That him?" She didn't speak. The younger man rode forward, dismounted. "Alia," he said. "Not sister, not kin. Just a name, brittle as bone." "Thorin," she replied, her voice steady. "You found me." "You left tracks," he said, "and Vince Travers left a trail of smoke." "I didn't kill him." "Doesn't matter. You led him here. You're dangerous." Caleb stepped forward. "She didn't lead him. He was following me." Thorin turned, looked Caleb up and down. "You're the white man who saved her. I'm the man who didn't let her die." Thorin gave a cold nod. "Then you're the man who made things harder." 2 of his warriors dismounted. One carried a curved blade. The other had a musket across his chest. Alia stepped between them. "You knew, Thorin, about the land, about Chief Hanto's deal with the railroad. You knew they were trading sacred ground for coin." Thorin's jaw tensed. It was survival. "It was betrayal," she said, eyes glinting, "and you let them hang me for trying to stop it. You would have torn the tribe apart." "No," she said. "You already did." Caleb raised his rifle slowly. "Let her go, Thorin. We'll ride west. You can say you never saw us." "No, I can't do that," Thorin replied. "Too many eyes, too many mouths." Then he looked at Aelia. "You were my sister," he said. "But now you're just noise." She nodded once. "Then shut me up." The shot came not from Caleb, but from Aelia. Her revolver, borrowed from Caleb's saddle, was already up. The bullet tore through Thorin's thigh, dropping him. The other two drew. Caleb fired once. One fell. The third swung his musket, caught Caleb's shoulder. He spun, went down. Aelia screamed, fired again. Missed. The warrior lunged. She ducked, rolled, kicked sand into his face. Caleb crawled, grabbed a rock, and smashed it into the attacker's skull. Blood sprayed. The man fell. Silence. Then just birds. Distant. Unbothered. Thorin groaned, bleeding into the dirt. Alia stood over him, panting. "You lied," she said. "To them, to me, to yourself." He coughed. I was afraid." "I know," she whispered. "So was I, but I didn't let you die." She turned to Caleb. He was bleeding from the shoulder, face pale. She ran to him, knelt. "You stubborn son of a—" "Still breathing," he rasped. "You better be." She pulled his shirt open, tore fabric to bind the wound. Her hands moved fast, urgent but careful. "You okay?" he asked. She looked him dead in the eye. "I will be," she said. "But not if you die now." They left Thorin where he lay, alive, broken. Alia didn't look back. She tied the rope to her saddle horn that evening, not as a noose, but as a reminder of survival, of the cost of silence, of who she was before they called her traitor. They rode west, past where the river curved like a scar, into land where no name held power. That night, they didn't set camp as strangers. She leaned against him under the stars, head on his uninjured shoulder, and whispered, "You still afraid of ghosts?" He shook his head. "Not anymore." "There?" "Why not?" "Because they brought me to you." The land opened up like a breath finally released. Beyond the last ridge of shale and pine, the world stretched bare and wide. No more trees, no more cover. Just miles of golden grass whispering under the wind, and a horizon so far it made promises you couldn't hear unless your soul was quiet. Caleb reined in his horse at the edge of the bluff. Alia pulled up beside him, her hair loose in the breeze, skin bronzed from a week beneath the sun. The rope still hung from her saddle horn, not coiled now, but braided into a loop, tight and deliberate. He glanced at her. "You sure this is where you want to stop?" She looked out across the open, unclaimed land. "No," she said, "but it's where I want to begin." They descended slowly, hooves sending up dust that clung to their boots, their coats, their breath. They rode until sundown, and when the sky began to bleed orange and the moon peeked through like a guilty memory, they found an abandoned trading post nestled beside a dried creek bed. Just a stone chimney, a half-fallen roof, and 4 standing walls that remembered stories no one told anymore. But it was theirs now. That night, they didn't build a fire. The stars were enough. They sat on the edge of the collapsed porch, sipping coffee from a dented tin pot Caleb had bartered for at Fort Supply weeks before. Alia's voice broke the quiet first. "You still think about that village?" Caleb didn't look at her. "Every day." She sipped. "You ever forgive yourself?" He hesitated. "Number." Alia nodded like she understood too well. "Me neither. I keep hearing their voices. Not the ones that judged me, the ones that believed me, the ones who stayed silent when they wanted to scream for me. That silence is louder than any noose." Caleb leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "What do we do with silence like that?" Alia turned to him, eyes catching starlight. "We break it. Every day. In small ways. Until it can't hurt anymore." He smiled, just a flicker. "You're braver than you look." "I'm angrier than I look," she said. "But anger gets old. It needs a home, or it eats you." "Lay." Caleb tapped his cup. "You thinking this place could be a home?" "I'm thinking, if it has walls, a roof, and Youthen maybe." A beat passed. Then he whispered, "I never thought I'd get another chance." She set down her cup. "You didn't," she said. "You made one." They rebuilt slow, one wall at a time. Caleb patched the roof with tar cloth and scraps of timber he cut himself. Alia dug up the old root cellar and found 6 glass jars, still sealed, 3 full of beans, 1 of vinegar, and 2 holding pickled eggs too brave for either of them to eat. By the 5th day, they had a door that closed. By the 7th, Alia planted her first row of wild tobacco beside the chimney. Marking it with stones, she polished herself. Sometimes they spoke, sometimes they worked in silence, but it was never the silence of guilt. It was the silence of peace. One morning, while Caleb was out hunting along the canyon ridge, a rider appeared. A woman, hair braided in the old Seminole way, silver beads along her temples, her horse painted with red and black stripes. Alia watched her from the porch, hand on her revolver. The woman dismounted, removed her gloves, and bowed her head. "I'm not here to take you," she said. "I'm here to tell you. They know." Alia's throat tightened. "Who sent you?" "No one. I left. I saw what they did to you. I couldn't stop it, but I can witness it." She held out a small satchel. Inside, 2 pieces of paper official letters. One bore the seal of the Territorial Railway Company. The other, a deed of land exchange signed by Chief Hanto and a U.S. Marshal. "You were right," the woman said. "You always were." Alia stood still. Then she asked, "And Thorin?" "Exiled," the woman said. "Alive, but he walks alone now." They sat in the dirt, no words for a while. Finally, Alia said, "Tell them I'm not coming back." The woman nodded. "But tell them I lived." When Caleb returned, she handed him the satchel. He read both documents. Then he looked at her with something that wasn't surprise, but reverence. "What will you do with them?" Alia smiled. "Nothing." He raised an eyebrow. "They were never for revenge," she said. "They're for proof. One day someone will come asking and I'll be ready." Caleb nodded. "You want to teach the next one." She looked at the stars. "I want the next one to survive easier." Seasons changed. Spring bled into summer. The porch grew longer. The roof held against 2 storms. A blue tablecloth showed up one day with red flowers stitched into it. Alia never told Caleb where she got it. She wore it as a shawl on cold mornings. Sometimes neighbors came. Wanderers. Lost men. One woman with 3 children and a black eye. Alia made soup. Caleb gave them wood and bullets. The house began to carry more than 2 names. It carried purpose. One night, as thunder rumbled low across the prairie, Alia stood barefoot under the doorway, wind tugging at her braid. Caleb came behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. She leaned back. "Tell me something," she whispered. "What kind of something?" "Something only a man with ghosts in his lungs would say." He kissed the top of her head. "Sometimes," he murmured, "I think you saved me before I ever pulled that knife. I think I heard you breathing before I ever saw you swing." "Mel." Alia turned. "I believe you," she said. Then she pulled something from behind her back. "The rope." He frowned. "You still got that?" She nodded. "I kept it because it reminded me how close I came to letting them decide who I was." She handed it to him. "But now, I want to bury it." He stared at it, ran his thumb along the worn coil. "Where?" She smiled. "Next to the garden." They buried it at dawn, together. No words, no prayers, just earth, soft and red, and 2 sets of hands that had killed and saved and reached and built. As the sun rose over the edge of the world, Alia whispered, "This is not the end of the story." Caleb nodded. "No, ma'am, just the start of a new one." Epilogue. Years later, 1893, a woman with silver in her hair and fire in her spine stands beside a young girl holding a worn journal. On its leather cover is a carving, a rope loop crossed by a branch. "This," the woman says, "is where your people tried to silence me, and this is where I chose to speak louder." The girl looks up. "Is it true you were hanged and lived?" The woman smiles. "Number I died," she says, "but then I came back." Behind them, a man in a wide-brimmed hat shapes wood by the porch, humming a half-familiar tune. Dust swirls in the wind, soft as breath, and the land listens because it remembers. And some stories, once buried, bloom stronger than ever. The wind outside the cabin had stilled. No more howling through the boards. No dust scratching its way beneath the door, just the soft hush of night, thick and quiet like a held breath. The kind of silence that either heals or breaks. Inside, Caleb leaned back against the wall, one boot crossed over the other, a tin cup warm between his palms. The fire had burned down to coals, glowing like old memories. Alia sat across from him, wrapped in the army blanket, knees pulled to her chest. Her face, half lit by the fire, looked calmer now, less like a hunted thing, more like someone trying to remember who she used to be. "You always this quiet?" she asked suddenly, her voice low but not brittle. Caleb sipped his coffee. "Only when I don't have anything worth saying." She raised an eyebrow. "Then what made you talk to me that first day?" He paused, then said, "Because you weren't supposed to be alive, and I needed to believe that some things could still surprise me." Duh. Alia let that sit for a moment. Then softer, "It surprised me too." She unfolded her legs and stood, slow from the soreness still lingering in her ribs. Her steps across the wooden floor were light, but not uncertain. "I used to talk a lot," she said. "As a child, they said my mouth was quicker than my mind." Caleb looked up, a small smile tugging at the edge of his mouth. "Sounds dangerous." It was. She reached for the tin kettle, poured a little water into his cup. "Especially when you speak against men who wear feathers and carry secrets." She handed the cup back to him. Their fingers brushed and lingered, just a second longer than either of them expected. Caleb looked down. Alia didn't move away. "I thought I was doing something good," she said, her voice suddenly distant. "Uncovering the truth, stopping them from selling what wasn't theirs to give. Land, spirit ground, burial sites, pieces of us. Left. And instead," he said gently, "they made you the enemy." She nodded. "Because the truth breaks more than it fixes. It rattles the roots. And most people, they'd rather live on a lie than die standing in the wind." There was something in her tone, not just bitterness, but something older, a resignation laced with defiance, like someone who'd been broken but hadn't stayed broken. Caleb set his cup aside. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "What they did to you that doesn't define you." She met his eyes. "No," she said, "but it followed me. Every time I close my eyes, I feel the rope, not on my skin, in my breath." She placed a hand on her chest, "Like I'm still hanging." Caleb didn't speak. He just reached out, not for her hand, but toward her shoulder, slow, open, offering not taking. She let him. His fingers rested lightly above the cloth where the bruises had begun to fade. "You're not hanging now," he said, barely above a whisper. "You're here, on the ground, breathing." Alia closed her eyes. One tear slipped down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. "I forgot what it felt like to be touched without fear," she said, "to be looked at without judgment." Caleb pulled his hand back, gently. "You don't owe me anything, Alia." "I know." They sat in silence again, but this time it felt warm, full, like the room had shifted. After a moment, she stood and walked to the window. Outside, the moon lit the land in silver wild grass, rolling like waves, shadows long and undisturbed. "I used to believe in stories," she said, "the ones the old women whispered by firelight, about spirits that lived in rivers, women who turned into owls, men who became storms. They all had a lesson." Caleb tilted his head. "And what's yours?" She turned, her silhouette framed by moonlight. Her voice was steady and fierce. "That even if they hang you for telling the truth, your voice still echoes, if someone lives to carry it forward." Caleb stood now too, slow, thoughtful. "And you think I'm the one to carry it?" She shrugged, but there was a glint in her eyes. "You're the only man I've met who listened without interrupting." He chuckled softly. "I've done enough damage in silence. Maybe it's time I start using my ears more than my fists." Alia moved closer, close enough for him to see the faint scar under her jaw, the one the rope left, not deep, but real, and she saw the scar on his temple, the one time he said nothing and followed orders. Two people, two ghosts, learning how to be alive again. Outside, the night stretched on. Inside, they didn't say another word. They just stood there, not touching, not needing to letting the fire die and the quiet settle. Because some healing doesn't need sound, it just needs presence. And they had found that, in the most unexpected place of all.